Why do you explain yourself to a world that doesn't listen? You were born screaming your truth, but they taught you to whisper, to shrink, to abandon yourself in silence. That's not destiny. It's a lie you've lived too long. The rebelde silencioso inside you is waking, ready to burn the script of your pain. But will you let it command, or will you keep explaining? Look, I'm not here to feed you pretty words or sell you answers. You're here because something's off, right? You feel it, that ache when you say yes but mean no, when you explain yourself to people who don't care. This isn't just philosophy, it's your life. In this video, we're diving into why you keep abandoning yourself, why you're stuck in a script you didn't write. We'll unravel the rebelde silencioso inside you, the part that's done with silence, done with playing small. No fluff, no lectures, just raw truth to wake you up. Are you ready to stop explaining and start commanding? Stick with me, because this is about you. Explaining yourself is begging for permission to exist. There's a moment, a precise, invisible moment, when your voice breaks, not because it was silenced, but because it was offered where it was never welcomed. That moment is called explanation, and it's the moment you lose power. You try to be understood. You think that maybe if they just knew what you meant, they'd respect you more, love you more, see you more. But here's the brutal truth. Explaining is not connection, it's submission. Every time you explain yourself to someone who isn't listening, you shrink. You reinforce the belief that their opinion weighs more than your presence. You give away sovereignty over your own reality. And the worst part? You don't even notice you're doing it, because you were trained to. You were taught that silence is guilt, that absence is arrogance, that saying no without a long justification is selfish, that unless you explain your absence, your boundary, your pain, it doesn't count. But that's a lie. And that lie is the first link in the chain that keeps you emotionally imprisoned. That's what most people become, apologies wearing skin. Because deep down, they believe they must earn space, that existing is something they have to negotiate. But let me ask you something brutal. When was the last time you truly felt heard after explaining yourself? Exactly. People don't hear explanations. They hear insecurity. They hear a plea disguised as clarity. And in a world addicted to domination, a plea is an invitation to be used. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what he didn't say, and what you need to hear, is that when your why is to be accepted by others, you will bear any humiliation. Stop explaining. Start commanding. Commanding doesn't mean shouting. It means withdrawing with purpose. Commanding means letting your boundary be the full sentence. No footnotes, no afterthoughts, no emotional disclaimers. The moment you stop explaining, the world becomes uncomfortable, not because you're wrong, but because you finally stopped asking for permission to exist. Let that discomfort do its work, because silence is not absence. It is power condensed. You weren't born explaining yourself. You were taught. Somewhere between the silence of your childhood room and the eyes that watched you become who they wanted, not who you were, you absorbed a dangerous message. If I'm not useful, I'll be abandoned. This was not spoken out loud. It didn't need to be. It was carved into your nervous system through subtle punishments, disappointed sighs, withheld affection. Through the chilling quiet that followed your boundaries. Through the warmth that followed your compliance. That's how you became emotionally available, not out of love, but out of survival. You learned that your needs were too much, that your no would cost you affection, that being good meant being open, being ready, being small enough to fit into other people's lives. And so, you became the good one, the nice one, the emotionally accessible one, the one who's always there, except for yourself. You became fluent in anticipation. What do they need? What should I say to be accepted? How do I soften myself to make them stay? You started negotiating your own instincts like they were dangerous weapons. And over time, you stopped feeling the edges of yourself at all. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is what fate looks like. Saying yes when your body screams no. Explaining your exhaustion as if it needs to be forgiven. Smiling through the weight of being expected and discarded in the same breath. You call it love. You call it empathy. You even call it strength. But it's not. It's auto-abandonment wearing a mask of kindness. And it's not your fault that you learned this, but it is your responsibility to unlearn it. Because until you do, your life will keep repeating the same script. You give more than you have. They take more than they need. You collapse. They leave. You explain. And the cycle begins again. Availability becomes your identity. And when availability is your identity, absence feels like death. You fear pulling away because you fear disappearing. Because somewhere inside, you still believe, if I'm not always there, they'll leave. And if they leave, I don't exist. But that belief isn't you. It's a scar. A scar left by those who made love conditional on your exhaustion. You don't need to prove you're enough by always being open. You don't need to explain your tiredness. You don't need to justify your limits. What you need is silence. The kind of silence that cuts, that reclaims, that reminds the world and yourself that you were never made to be a door always left unlocked. You were made to be a temple, and temples are not open 24/7. There's a strange law in the human psyche. The more available you are, the less value they see in you. It doesn't matter how deeply you care, how often you show up, how quickly you reply. If you're always there, you become background noise. Not presence, not mystery, not power, just expected, and eventually ignored. You think that explaining yourself, being there for everyone, making your motives crystal clear will protect you. But the truth is much darker. You become disposable the moment you become predictable. Because what is too abundant is treated like it's worthless. This is the invisible reversal. You try to be loved through your presence, but you are used because of it. You're not being rejected for being unavailable. You're being consumed for being too present. You became someone people expect to show up, no matter how they treat you. They don't have to earn you. They don't even have to respect you. Because you taught them that your time, your body, your heart are open access. And no one respects what they didn't fight to reach. Imagine this. A person walks into a temple. The doors are always open. No one watches, no ritual, no cost. Soon, they stop bowing. They enter with shoes. They laugh inside. And eventually, they forget it's sacred. That's what happens to you. You turned yourself into an emotional temple without walls, and they turned your sanctity into convenience. Carl Jung believed that the outer world mirrors the inner. So ask yourself, how do you treat your own presence? Do you guard it? Do you respect it? Or do you offer it up like a vending machine, always ready, always stocked, no matter how drained you feel? You might think that makes you good, but it makes you empty. Because giving without discernment isn't generosity, it's desperation. And desperation never attracts reverence. It attracts vultures. Here's a hard truth. They don't care why you're so kind. They only care that your kindness is endless. And as soon as it becomes scarce, they call you cold, arrogant, difficult. Not because you changed, but because you stopped being functional. You stopped playing your role. The good one, the helper, the explainer, the one who never says, "You don't deserve access to me." And now you feel the shame, the guilt of pulling away, the anxiety of not replying fast enough, the dread that if you stop showing up, you'll be forgotten. But here's something no one told you. The ones who forget you the moment you become scarce were never seeing you. They were seeing the function you performed for them, the emotional service, the quiet obedience. You were a mirror, not a person. And now you've stepped out of the frame. So they break, they panic, they accuse. But don't go back, because this is where your value begins to rise, the moment you become rare. You think power is in your words, that if you just say it right, with the right tone, the right timing, the right softness, they'll finally respect you. But you've tried that. You've tried explaining. You've tried defending. You've tried being so reasonable that no one could possibly misinterpret you. And yet, they still did. They still crossed you, dismissed you, drained you. So now, let's try something else. Disappear. Withdraw, not as a reaction, but as a statement. Not out of fear, but out of command. Leave the space, and let the silence speak. Most people live in noise. They depend on your reaction to anchor their own identity. They push your buttons not because they want truth, but because they fear irrelevance. You giving them attention, even through conflict, means they still have power. But the day you stop reacting, the game ends. The day you vanish, emotionally, psychologically, energetically, they collapse. Because now they have to face themselves. Now the mirror is gone. Now the echo chamber is silent. And silence is terrifying for those who built their identity through your availability. Nietzsche wrote, "Silence is worse. All truths that are kept silent become poisonous." But here's the twist. Not all silence is suppression. Some silence is revelation. When you stop explaining yourself, you force others to confront the void they filled with your constant giving. They start to wonder, did I lose them? Did I cross a line? Were they never really okay with this? That discomfort? It's not your problem. It's your power. Power is not always loud. In fact, real power is rarely heard. It is felt in the absence. It is sensed in the lack of apology. It is feared when the one who always showed up no longer does. This is the power of disappearance. It is not fleeing. It is forcing a reckoning. Imagine a room. You walk in and there's no one speaking. Just a single candle lit at the center. You don't dare raise your voice. You lower your eyes. You feel something sacred, though no one says a word. That is what your energy should become. A temple, not a hallway. Something people approach with intention or not at all. This is not about being cold. It's not about punishing others. It's about protecting the integrity of your presence. You are not a product. You are not a hotline. You are not available on demand. If your silence threatens someone, they were never interested in your truth, only your service. And now that the service has ended, they call you selfish. Let them. Because silence, when it's born from awareness, is not absence. It's dominance. You don't owe explanations to people who never asked how you felt before demanding your attention. You don't owe presence to those who disappeared the moment you had a need. You don't owe words to those who never heard you anyway. You owe yourself one thing only: to become unavailable and see what breaks. In the breaking, you will find something unexpected: yourself. The version of you that no longer trades truth for company. The version of you that commands by stepping back. The version of you that lets absence echo louder than any scream. Becoming unavailable is not passive. It is an art, a strategy, a reconfiguration of the psychic field you've allowed others to feed on. It is not about ghosting, not about revenge, not about playing hard to get. It is about reclaiming your energy, that precious force you've been hemorrhaging for years. Because your exhaustion isn't from doing too much. It's from giving to what doesn't nourish. And now, it's time to build boundaries that are not fences, but filters. Carl Jung saw the psyche as an energy system. Every thought, emotion, and reaction costs something. So the question becomes, where are you leaking and who benefits? Every impulsive reply, every emotional explanation, every just wanted to clarify text is a withdrawal from your inner bank. And most of those transactions are overdrafts. Slow your energy were infinite. It isn't. You've trained the people around you to expect quick access, to believe your yes means nothing, to treat your empathy as a public resource. But what if you stopped being so accessible? What if your time became sacred? What if your silence became a test? Not for cruelty, but for clarity. Because here's a difficult truth. People treat you based on what it takes to reach you. If you're always there, you're a tool. If you're selective, you become a presence. If you're deliberate, you become a force. Slow your responses. Don't reward urgency. Let space breathe before you reply. Withdraw emotionally first. Detach your self-worth from whether they get you or not. Speak less. Let your actions and your absences deliver the message. Track your psychic leaks. Who drains you? What words deplete you? When do you collapse after giving? Write it down. Treat it like warfare, because it is. Your unavailability must be designed, not performed. Not a mask, but a real shift in center of gravity. You are no longer standing in their orbit. They are now unsure if they're still in yours. That uncertainty isn't cruelty. It's a reset, a reorientation of power. The rebel does not scream. He disappears. He doesn't justify his silence. He inhabits it. The moment you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop filling the void, others have to face the echo. And that echo says, "You no longer have access to me just because you're used to it." This is the architecture of unavailability. Every boundary is a wall carved in silence. Every absence is a pillar rising from self-respect. Every pause is a doorway to a version of you no longer starving for approval. When you build a life where your energy is earned, not assumed, you stop bleeding. You stop performing. You stop apologizing for existing. And in that stillness, something else begins to grow. Dignity. The kind that doesn't need to be spoken. The kind that walks into a room quietly and changes everything. And that echo says, "You no longer have access to me just because you're used to it." This is the architecture of unavailability. Every boundary is a wall carved in silence. Every absence is a pillar rising from self-respect. Every pause is a doorway to a version of you no longer starving for approval. When you build a life where your energy is earned, not assumed, you stop bleeding. You stop performing. You stop apologizing for existing. And in that stillness, something else begins to grow. Dignity. The kind that doesn't need to be spoken. The kind that walks into a room quietly and changes everything. There's a war inside you. One part wants to disappear, to finally stop explaining, stop being available, stop being used. The other still whispers, "What if they forget me?" This is not weakness. This is conditioning. This is the child inside you who learned that love was earned through performance, presence, and pleasing. You were not taught how to exist without proving your worth. And now that you've begun withdrawing, a deeper fear surfaces. If I'm no longer needed, will I still be wanted? This is the paradox of individuation. To become whole, you must first risk feeling alone. Because what you're shedding isn't just behavior, it's identity. You're not just stopping the explanations. You're burying the persona who survived by being chosen. The good one, the responder, the pleaser, the peacekeeper. And in her place, a silence emerges. Heavy, unfamiliar, sacred. You will want to go back, to send the text, to clarify, to soften the sharpness of your absence with a gentle explanation. Don't. Because this ache you feel, this silence that hurts, is not the pain of being rejected. It's the withdrawal from your old self. You're not mourning them. You're mourning the version of you who believed that being... Carl Jung called it the night-sea journey, the moment when the ego dissolves and the self begins to emerge. You are there now, in the dark water, between the comfort of who you were and the terror of who you're becoming. Here's what no one tells you. You don't fear being alone. You fear being unknown, unexplained, untranslated. But that's exactly where your power begins. When you no longer need to be understood, you become undeniable. So let them wonder, let them speculate, let them sit with your silence. That is the mirror now. Let them see their reflection, not your apology. And as for you, let the silence teach you who you are when no one is reacting to you. Because that version, the one who doesn't beg to be heard, is the only one who was ever real. Something changes when you stop explaining. You stop being seen through their eyes and finally start seeing through your own. Not the eyes of the child who had to be pleasing, not the eyes of the adult addicted to approval, but the eyes of someone who no longer negotiates their existence. You don't need to be understood to be real. You don't need to be visible to be powerful. In fact, your absence has spoken louder than every word you ever forced. And now, there's nothing left to prove. You thought disappearing would make you lose everything, but it's in disappearing that you finally return to yourself, return to your own rhythm, to your own breath, to the stillness that was always there beneath the noise of trying. You've built a temple from the rubble of your need to be liked, and now you stand at its entrance, not to invite the world in, but to decide who is even allowed to knock. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That privilege is quiet, private, invisible to those who only saw your function. They may call you cold, distant, selfish. Let them. They are mourning their control, not your love. You are not obligated to be known. You are not required to stay available. You are not here to be consumed. You are not the fire they gather around for warmth. You are the silence that teaches them how to sit in the dark without burning something." Now you understand. Power isn't in words. Power is in withdrawal. Command is not in confrontation. It is in non-response. And identity is not in being explained. It is in being untranslated. So here we are. You've returned, but not as they remember you. Now you walk slower, speak less, feel deeper. You've stopped explaining, and in that silence, something finally heard you, yourself. And now, the final question. If your silence says more than your words ever could, who still deserves access to your voice?